Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Death Session number 15. Moving along and heading down the barrel. I got to change that. The holidays are upon us. That is something that I didn't decide, so I guess I have to decide how I'm going to deal. I had a lovely time in New York, New Jersey. I had time in the city, time at home. Time on the streets of my hometown, time on my adopted hometown, walked around old neighborhoods I used to live in Manhattan, and saw friends. So that was great. I saw my mom. Everything about that is great. And then heading back to the West Coast, facing holidays away from that, and I guess picking and choosing Thanksgiving over Christmas. That's a thing. But as work subsides, and then the game of, basically the shutdown till imagining what the first is not really when things start. They'll start, that next week, probably more like the 5th, right? Usually. And I've always said a snide thing, because when people ask you resolutions, I just don't want to play those games or essentially share confidences. So depending on who's asking, I always would say I don't make resolutions on the new year. I make them on my birthday, which is my new year, correct? Right. But fiscally, calendar-wise, that denial mechanism isn't always going to work. It's just a matter of sharing, and I guess being reluctant to share might have something to do with the person asking, and inevitably, maybe because I start my New Year thinking more in November, because I don't believe you can, you need momentum going into the new year, which is why I adhere to my habits as stringently as possible, because it's too late. It's too late if you do it New Year's Day. It's too late. So you have to minimally have some runway, some momentum going into the new year, and some goals, or some tangible habits that are paying off. I started stretching this year. I can tell that my my flexibility's improved over the year, and that when I was in New York walking, triple the amount of steps I would average in LA, that I was up to it. I was able to hit the stairs on the subways, the trains, the platforms. I was able to just book it all over town, go to the right avenue, depending on whether I was going uptown or downtown for a cab. So the legs are good, and a lot of that has to do with conditioning over the year. And so more of that, yes. And then I guess spiritually, emotionally, that's the key for where we're at, and I feel good about things, even though there's nothing I can point to. And understanding over the years how many defeatist things I had said to myself, how many tendencies were actually getting in my way. It's a lot different now with self-tape. You don't carry a lot of the angst that you once did into the room. And conventional wisdom says, yeah, but if you don't address that stuff, and you may not have in-room nerves because you're in your apartment with a friend reading a scene, there's still, if you don't address certain things, there's still something transmuted, via the lens that you are in a funky space. And so that does get across, and that can affect your vibe. But honestly, for me, I look forward to the self-tape as more of a, until they cast it, you get to play the role. And until they tell you no dice, it's fun to live with it for a few days, and to, make a really good effort, and maybe take a funky angle, or use a prop, and really give them, you never know. But if you, I have an old classmate, Heidi Marshall, is a casting director in New York and an acting coach and just phenomenal. And she said something that I didn't want to hear at the time, but she said that ultimately between casting and production, that every person who auditions is contributing to the project. If it's process of elimination, choices they make, things that they then redirect the actor who ultimately gets it, that you put into play because of your choices, that somehow, some way you did contribute. And that's a mighty, mighty distance for me to have traveled to even understand that. Or want to hear that, because obviously all you want is the job. And what she's saying is that, and I think, I'd have to really go back and look at everything. But if you gave the director an idea how to shoot something, if you went, like I said, if you went, like if you were working on a car and you set up the lens so that you were kind of like under the car, or you did a thing where you made it, the angle you chose was you were at the hood of the car, or you used the frame a certain way, or you read a line a certain way, and you didn't get the part, but whoever the director and the casting were like, that's great. Here's how you know that at least it made an impression, as you keep going in for that casting director. But you may have, in some altruistic way, which is really hard for me to really see the big picture that way. But as I get more holistic in my approach to life, sure, I've contributed. And just as, if you're a cynic, you say, okay, when the big boss comes to there's always those scenes in those movies where there's a big boss comes in, and either he's a dick to the janitor or he's awesome to the janitor. And if he's a cool guy to the janitor, he's like, everybody here is part of the team. And that whole sensibility. And if you're cynical, you say, well, that's just somebody being placating, or fucking with a guy who's got a crummy job at this company. But the truth is, working in restaurants, the place will shut down if a dishwasher doesn't show up. And the main chef, I've seen get behind the dish pit and do what's got to be done. And so the ethos that every job is no small parts, only small actors, and no wasted time. If you really put your foot forward properly as an audition, I guess you are a collaborator. It's just very hard when, as I shed the idea that most of my pursuit of the arts early in my life was for attention. And that's not new, or that's not an epiphany many actors haven't made. It's nothing new. Most actors are, like to be the center of attention. But as you really get into it, and as you really start to meet people, you meet a lot of shy people who are actors. You meet a lot of sensitive people who are actors. You meet a lot of people who are intellectual who are actors. And if you really want to boil it down, once you get past the attention seeking, or for me, it was the camaraderie of the stage, the backstage camaraderie, the building of a company, how like-minded I felt around normally back in the day, older people that I could connect with, people of a like mind, the disasters of dress rehearsal somehow being fixed in 24 magical hours and going perfectly on opening night. Those things were aside from the attention I got. But that need-based approach to my career early on did backfire when things inevitably, even for the most successful of us, don't go your way. I took them personally. I fell apart. I felt as if it was doomsday when, things wouldn't go my way. Losing agents, getting dropped by agents, getting a new agent, not having that connect. There were so many things that I took personally that hurt me. And then ultimately, even with agents and even with representation and all that stuff, hearing things from people like Heidi Marshall or people along the way saying that ultimately it is you that is the captain of the ship, and they get 10% and you get 90%, so you got to do the ratio of work in that regard. And it's finally starting to dawn on me. And the good news is getting back into class and being rejuvenated in the craft. I still want to do it, and not for the attention, because as I become less attention seeking as a person in the world, and just wanting the attention of my friends and my family, and like the, not attention, but I just don't need as many external affirmations or confirmations or rejections to take personally, or I'm just not bouncing around like an emotional pinball anymore. And so I think that is the, sadly, I would love to test this stuff out in room, but that's not where the business is anymore. And if, the classic, if I'd known, then what I know now, I would have been a lot better in the room. And I guess the hard part of acting, because it's not creative, it's interpretive, and especially for intellectual people, it's hard to let, quote unquote, your talent show forth. A lot of acting is getting out of the way, trusting that your, quote unquote, talent, your aura, your interpretation, trusting that is something. It's a part of you, but it is sort of the part of you that you cannot control, and you can't bring it forth sometimes. You just have to let it be. And so I guess, I don't know how you make a resolution of letting it be, but, the hard part for me now is I have written something, which is the creative part, not the interpretive part. So I am trying to be a content creator, an artist. I am a writer. I'm intellectually trying to say something that then, as the actor, I will have to perform. And, that it's hard to be zen about trying to get a one-man show on a fucking stage somewhere in America. So you have to wear two hats. You have to be two-sided, which is, apt that the drama is represented by the comedy mask and the tragedy mask. It's because there's a duality in really good art, and there's a duality in being alive. And so I'm gonna have to let flow when I am expressing what I've written intellectually, but I also have to then do production tasks, make contacts, push this agenda, read it out loud, showcase it, all these things that are right now, for the first time, maybe I am saying, well, there's not a lot that can be done by New Year. So I should, rather than be stymied, I should be, understanding that if we're going to keep this going, that once the New Year hits, then the clock does tick. And then I have till 25 to at least do this show in some form, fashion, for some type of audience. And, I guess I once again take ownership, charge, and let those collaborations, with those auditions, let them be collaborations, and let the attitude be, if you were, if you want to have some ego, hey, if you were smart, you'd hire me because look what I just threw your way. But if you don't, I guess you went a different direction. And, hopefully that can be my attitude, in the new year. There'll probably be more time to, I think there's another Tuesday. I think Christmas Eve is a Tuesday. And so I don't know where I'll be in the world. Maybe I'll double stack these so that there is a Christmas Eve one if I'm on the road. It's still a melancholy time, I have to say. And that's something that I have to be okay with, and try not to, I guess, bleed out. That's the thing. I guess where I am frustrated with people in my life or strangers in my life or what's going on in the world today, it's we all have wounds. And, if you bleed out and if you leak onto someone else's seat or spurt out, you're harming others when it's not their injury. And that's frustrating when people kind of don't do their own self-soothing or self-healing or whatever it might be. And, or, obviously just be clear about needing help. That's been a problem of mine also. But I can't make it somebody else's problem that I'm not thrilled about the holidays, because that's just bad mojo. And so people who understand are going through worse, they can say, yeah, it's become a thing that it's a lot of pressure exerted on a certain day on the calendar. And, I got a brother who's a doctor who's been on call during the holidays. So it's not just people in the service industry that are working on the holidays. And if you want the holidays off, you become a teacher or work at the post office or get into banking. But it's not an indictment on your life that sometimes you have to work these days. They're harder for me to do now, and thankfully, the way the schedules have worked out, it's not on me this year. But ultimately, I want to be at a place where I'm doing my life's work all the time, and that the vacations aren't needed for rejuvenation, because I'm living in the vibe of the purpose that I meant to create all those years ago. And so maybe then dread won't be as manifest, but that could be also grass is always greener. There's always going to be traffic. There's always going to be dirty clothes in the hamper. There's always going to be some jerk off on a fucking speakerphone when you just want to hear quiet. And, that lack of control of the environment, that, I wrestle with that. But ultimately, I have to find my own true north and my own salvation and my own keeping my own hopes alive. And, looking forward to just testing some of this resilience and coming out the other side. And, maybe having some fun. That could be part of the equation too, is a good time once in a while. And the death sessions, man. I'm putting them out there. They're not getting a lot of traction. And again, it's really just a really good exercise of talking extemporaneously at length, stretching into, the realm of off the dome vlogging, or when I used to do stand up, if you had to do 40 minutes, half hour, those were stretches for me, to be honest with you. And so it's not a merely a test of stamina for the watcher and or listener. It's just getting out, your fuel range, how pilots and aviation, there are ranges for certain planes based on fuel and weight and capacity and all that stuff. And ultimately, I want to get to the place where I am a transcontinental type of pilot of my life. And so thank you for listening this far, and thanks for this thus far, I should say. And thanks to the friends and family that, keep us running through these holidays, even if we're not always present for each other in the physical space. And again, hopefully I'll see you over the holidays somehow. If I maybe just do one of these back to back, or, it may be a little haphazard, but I want to keep the streak up minimally into the, 20s of the death sessions. And I really appreciate it. I think I'm working out my sound issues a little better, and I'm able to set up a lot quicker, so that it's not Herculean every time I set out to do one of these things. And, that's been a great blessing to get better with these self-tapes, with equipment, with rapid means of production, because a lot of times things have to be, things are first to market these days. And with the internet, first to market can be instant. You see how fast these memes get out there. You see how fast people are responding. And, you have to be able to stop, drop, and roll and bust these things out when the idea comes. So being a little less precious is also something I might start working on. So before I zone out, as I'm even doing my own speech, I don't know how I'd anticipate you would be interested in listening if I'm zoning out. So I'm going to sign off here on Session15. Carl DeGregorio, thank you, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.